Hello and welcome, everyone. Big shout out to our HHCC members and EDF fellows tuning in today. And a huge thank you to Precious Goodson, EDF Fellow 2015 and lead alumni volunteer for making today's C3 episode possible. My name is Marianne Delatorre, and I am the Hidden Heroes Caregiver Community Program Coordinator for the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. We are excited that you are able to join us today for today's series, the Caregiver Community Connection C3, presented by the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and powered by our partners at Wounded Warrior Project. We're also very pleased to have the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs join us as partners for this series as well. Today's C3, Top Tips for Resumes and Networking, we are pleased to feature Jonathan Morris, who is the Director of Business Program at Warrior Care. This C3 episode is part of launching our employment series leading up to our career fair and convening on October 29th. So please save the date. Before we get started, I want to mention to all attendees that the session is recorded and will be available in the Guides tab on HHCC or on our website. Also, we would love to hear suggestions on future topics to discuss and speakers to feature. If you have any ideas, please send them to us via email at events@elizabethdolefoundation.org. With all of that said, we will take questions towards the end. Today's moderator, Colton Whittaker, will be hanging out in the chat box. Be sure to submit any questions using the Q&A box located in the Zoom control panel, as well as on Facebook if you're tuning in from there. We will be taking notes of all the questions to get them answered live during our Q&A. As well, today we are selecting 4 winners from our meeting participants during the episode. To enter into the drawing, engage with us in the chat. Today's winners will receive free prizes. And then today's C3 features as well also include closed captioning. If you would like to disable it, go to the live transcript button in the control panel and click Disable Auto Transcription. It can be disabled at any time during the meeting. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jonathan as we get started. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jonathan Morris. I work with the Department of Defense, Defense Health Agency, and my full-time job away from this effort is the Recovery Care Program, which is the DoD's version of what is support from the Wounded Warrior programs in DoD. And then outside of that, I do a whole lot of work within the community as well. I am a retired Army veteran and have disability. I also am part of the community for support of adults with disabilities, children with disabilities. I am a foster parent in the state of Maryland, have been in Hawaii, and advocate for both of those communities, as well as have been a caregiver and as a foster parent. About 2 years ago, somebody said, "Why don't you just call yourself a caregiver? You've been doing foster care for 30 years. And I said, "Never thought of it like that." So I got background in the game. I have the t-shirt and I'm here to help share the t-shirt. I want to thank Hidden Heroes and the team that are on the screen today, and especially Precious Goodson, who's I've been friends with on this for several years now, and Marianne Delatorre, who we connected with a couple years ago. And we've had opportunities to share a lot about what I do for a living within my full-time job and how it supports the caregiver community and service members, families, veterans, and the wounded warrior population, and multiple federal agencies across the United States. So let's go to the next slide. So my career, my background is in nursing. Like I said, I did over 20 years in the military. My last assignment was Walter Reed. I was part of the old Walter Reed. I was part of the Afghan conflict in Iraq and all the way back to the first Gulf War back in the 1990s. So now I'm giving my age out. Throughout all that, I do want you to know I didn't stop going to school and getting an education. I have a bachelor's in healthcare administration. It took me 25 years to get there because the computers weren't available when I first started this job and all my other occupations, but I got it done just as I was getting ready to retire. and have my background in master's in public education, but my full-time everyday job is non-medical case management on the DoD side of care coordination for service members and their families. Along with, I manage several information technology platforms within the organization. My disclaimer is I am not a human resources specialist by trade, or training, but I've had a lot of years of experience supporting service members, families, caregivers, colleagues with their resumes, how to get them into the system, how to help navigate the USA job system, and been pretty successful over that time working with many, many people over the years, both in the military and outside the military, especially with the caregiver population, on how to navigate and find occupations, because with your full-time job at home as a caregiver and how to navigate that and juggle those balls to be able to do that and be able to have a job in many cases, we've kind of cracked the nut a little bit on how to make that happen. And I will tell you, one of the advanced capabilities that has really helped this effort grow as far as caregivers, wounded warriors, and families being able to work is COVID-19. It's one of the positives that's come out of that event, with the fact that the industry and public have really, really engaged pivoting to being able to work remote, work from home, work off your computers, and it has increased the opportunities for occupations and careers out there exponentially. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about resumes and trying to work with them. I want to talk about branding and networking, because without branding and networking, you're in a little teeny hole and you're missing out on hundreds and hundreds, or thousands actually, of opportunities. We'll talk about some tips beyond that, talk about a cover letter, both for when you're submitting resumes, even sometimes online, and thank you letters to organizations where you've applied and maybe not been picked, but letting them know if future opportunities are out there, then you are continuing to be interested. And then I want to talk about connection and resources, because that is a big key piece of my life day to day, 24/7, 365, and how I support caregivers, families, veterans, service members, the whole population, as I manage several websites, one of them being the National Resource Directory, which has been around since 2010, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later. The other thing I want to talk about, you're good. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is getting those jobs and making sure that you've got a good plan in place to understand where you sit and your opportunities. I will tell you just one simple example is, even though my wife and I are foster parents and caregivers, she didn't have enough on her plate, and she was able to go out because she wanted to do something else about 8 years ago, went on cares.com, connected with a service member who had left the military because of a spinal injury, and became his caregiver, which in turn gave him the opportunity to find out about all of the benefits and services that are part of the Veterans Administration, because he was not aware of a lot of benefits and services that he was missing out on as part of that process. Next slide. So let me do something real quick here. There we go. When it comes to resumes, every day we work with members of the military community. I do every single day as part of our portfolio within the recovery care program, Warrior Care. We have multiple platforms that we work with the service members and families. One of them is called Education and Employment Opportunities, or what we call our E2I initiative. And it is partnered with another initiative called Operation Warfighter, which is an internship program for service members who are going through the disability process or are found eligible through our programs to be able to participate in federal internships across the United States, not just here in the district where I'm located, but literally across the United States. We have regional coordinators for both those programs out in the field at 10 locations across the United States to help with those processes. They help with resume building. They help with connecting people with job opportunities. We receive on average about 200-300 jobs a week into our organization. We're not a job board, but what happens is, as I said, part of my job is working with multiple federal agencies across the United States. Three of my biggest is Department of Veterans Affairs, Department of Labor, and US Department of Agriculture. And on a weekly basis, all three of those organizations provide us with a list of job postings and links to occupations, not just for service members, but for families and caregivers as well, for them to be able to reach out and look at possible opportunities around the nation. And people always scratch their head, because I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out to US Department of Agriculture. When people hear that, they talk about, well, if it's agriculture, it's just farming. And I will tell you, I actually thought that several years ago, until the lead for the program, Mr. Bill Ashton, came and briefed our organization on USDA and the breadth and depth of all of the things that they do that are not even part of farming communities, but they do small business development, helping people with small business if they want to think about farming communities and things like that. But they also work in the food service industry, but not like grocery stores and things like that. They work the back end of it with inspectors and all kinds of other occupations that are down that line. And I would encourage you to reach out and find out more about USDA and their occupational support. From Department of Labor, big Department of Labor and Department of Labor vets, we get about 4 emails a month, on usually pretty much a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week, on occupations that are available that we share out to the community. Like I said, we're not a job board, but we share those out to the community. I share them with our peer support coordinators, which is our regional coordinators for caregiver program within DoD, for them then to be able to share with the clients for those people who might be interested in a position and or looking, and or a family member who's looking, or a service member that a caregiver is taking care of who might be eligible or might be a good fit, along with our regional coordinators for E2I and OWF. Experience is important, but sometimes it's not the most important thing. I can tell you that one of the organizations I work with, and people always scratch their head when they hear this, is Paralyzed Veterans of America. And I'm not promoting anybody specifically, but giving you examples of organizations out there that can help you through these processes, because this is what I use as part of my resource pool to help people get connected. Everybody goes, well, Paralyzed Veterans of America, don't you have to be paralyzed? And I will tell you, not at all. They support veterans, service members in transition, families, military, the whole gamut of people. Day before yesterday, I did a webinar with them where they had representatives from the HR system at Amazon national office. And Amazon is in the process of trying to hire 100,000 people nationwide to work in fulfillment centers, be drivers, all kinds of occupations out there that they're looking to fill. And we can share that information or get you connected with the PVA's Veterans Employment Program to get connected to that information so that you can learn more about that. We had a webinar with Bank of America, who I partner with on occasion, and they have about 10,000 positions across the United States for service members, veterans, caregivers, and families. And you hear the rhythm of this, where it's not just about service members, it's not just about wounded warriors. Most of these organizations have learned that it's about the caregivers as well, who need to be able to have time and opportunity to get out and be able to supplement beyond being at home, to be able to pay the bills and or continue to have a career. Because we understand that many caregivers have given up their original occupations and opportunities to go to school and get their degrees or technical skills done. And so we're going to talk about some key tips that we want to share with you about some things to make sure you look for when you're hunting for work. Next slide,
Jonathan,
please. Yes, ma'am.
and I really, I want to say how broad of a resource that you are serving different, regions in the United States. What I really love about your discussion was talking about the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's
Mhm.
something that we often don't think about. And I just want to give a shout out to caregivers, military and veteran caregivers, especially in rural areas, because that is a department that they should be consider working for in their area. So
Absolutely. U.S. Department of Agriculture in rural areas is a big one. They send me at least 10 to 15 opportunities a week that I post out on the web to my caregiver team and our E2I OWF and several other organizations with Wounded Warrior programs. And I will tell you another one is the Forestry Service and the Park Service and Customs. They're all sending us information to help the service members, families, and caregivers.
yes,
So I mean, the information's out there. So anybody who kind of puts out the thought that there's no jobs available for caregivers, I would tell you, I'm not going to agree with that statement. It's just learning how to be flexible and what positions are available. A big example is with our internship program. The service members who are in the IDES process and in the integrated disability system, which is where they're going through the board process as part of their transition if they transition to civilian life out of the military. Between that and being in the Wounded Warrior programs or being eligible for these programs, many people thought that while COVID was going on, we couldn't do any internships. And what I'm going to tell you is we did internships. We had probably 300 service members who were in the Wounded Warrior programs and in the education and employment programs across the military departments, because we work with all of the military services, SOCOM, and the Coast Guard on all of this effort. And allowing that to happen, they were in many cases able to connect with internship programs with federal agencies and private sector agencies and do them remotely, until there was a point where the companies and the agencies and those organizations felt comfortable for people to come in from part-time to even full-time in many cases. And for the service members who are on the DoD side of the effort, those internships are not just going in and making copies or pushing papers. It's them learning about these occupations and getting a feel for what's next after I transition, so that they can see that there are jobs and capabilities they can do with their hidden wounds and illnesses or their capability challenges that they have. I never call anything a disability because I've been in the nursing field for almost 40 years, and I've worked with people with challenges and what I call as abilities in other directions other than what they're used to, because we all know as the service members go through the disability process and they're transitioning, they all think their life is over, their career is over. And I will tell them it's not. It's just a new beginning to a new direction. So let's talk about some resumes. Let's talk about some fine points, things that I want to make sure people are thinking of when they look at their resumes and what the capabilities are. When you look at bullet points for your resumes, and I've heard this on all of the webinars that I've done as far as listening in from my perspective, is when you work on your resumes, don't write essays, don't write thesis papers. It doesn't matter what your education is. In the long run, that you're smart, people know that and they'll like it. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we let people know what you do for a living and get to the point. I will offer to you, working with many, many HR people, that their mission is to look through resumes. Many of these organizations have maybe 1 or 2 minutes to look at a resume. And in that 1 or 2 minutes, there's no opportunity for them to really dig into anything past a 2-page resume. It's not that you can't put the information in the system, because I will tell you, even with USA Jobs, you can write a 3 to 5 page resume and put information into the system with your knowledge, skills, and ability. But when you connect your resume to it, keep it simple. You can put all the details in there and let them know what's going on. I will tell you what we have learned over probably the last 3 or 5 years is the industry has changed a lot about all the great things people do and how they do it. That's great. But at the same time, they want to know what you did for a living and how you made change when you were working and what you were doing that created improvements or enhancements to an organization. So they're looking at qualitative and quantitative information that you can provide if you ran budgets. And so I always look at budgets as a big one, because for caregivers, you're like, well, I had a job and was doing all this and have a finance background, but for the last 3 to 5 years, I've been a caregiver at home. So I haven't been doing big budget. And I will tell you that in itself is something you should reconsider putting into your resume, is that you work with budgets, because you have taken on the challenge of being the caregiver, potentially in many cases the breadwinner in a family now, and you run budgets and your budgets have changed in how you do business at home. So it's important to let people know, hey, I'm a caregiver, but at the same time, I'm managing a yearly budget for my husband who has these challenges, is in a wheelchair, blind, has to go to medical appointments that require airfares and a whole lot of things that allow you to then articulate to them that you have these skill sets. When you're tailoring your resume, I will tell you, just like any organization, number one thing is, if you're looking for work and you want, or a career or a job or whatever you want to call it, make sure that you go to those organizations and learn about them through their websites. Get a feel for it. Is it an organization that I really want to look at? Is it an organization that might be a good fit, that I feel good about? Whether it's technology, whether it's safety, logistics, all kinds of things. I will tell you, there's a lot of caregivers out there who take occupations with Amazon because they can do logistics, or just anything out there as far as that technique. And I'm not advertising for Amazon, but they are a big company and they're continuing to grow around the United States. We all just recently saw, if you follow the news well, that I think it's Ford Motor Company is opening 2 brand new factories in the United States over the next couple of years, and it's going to spend $1 billion on the technology to go green with their vehicles, because they're trying by, I think it's 2035, 2040 to go green and go battery with everything they're doing. And these are important to make sure they do that. All of this stuff is where you as a caregiver want to make sure that you can translate what you do for a living into a solid set of information. When we talk about USA Jobs, if you're interested in jobs through USA Jobs, I tell people, look at what you do for a living, look at the job descriptions on USA Jobs, and make sure, if you can do it, look at the information and blend it into your resume. When you do your resume that says, I've had this experience there, I did technology, I did Java development for 5 or 6 years or whatever, I did quality assurance, I did nursing, I did whatever the occupation is blending it into your resume, and look at the way it's written in the position descriptions on USA Jobs. And I tell people, give your resume to somebody and let them look at it. I will tell you, I have helped some friends and colleagues get new jobs. And then what I did after we went through their resume and helped them build their resume is I told them, I don't charge people for looking at their resumes, but what I tell them to do is pay it forward. So when you share your information with others and say, hey, if you're looking, let me look at your resume. I'm pretty blunt with people on this, and I can tell you that Precious Goodson can tell you this. When I worked with her, when I first started with her, she had about a 10-page resume, and I told her, you know, that's amazing information, and I'm ecstatic that you have your doctorate, but what do you do for a living, and what do you bring to the table, and how are you going to help everybody get involved with you and look at you as a possible positive for their organization, who's going to help them grow and reshape the environment and help them be out there. The other thing I'm going to tell you is, and this is point number 3 here, is the language you use in your resumes is important. I know many caregivers out there have been prior military, and it's extremely important when you do your resumes that you take the acronyms and the jargon and the titles out and translate them into civilian language, because there's many organizations out there who don't know what a command star major is or don't know what a colonel is. When I retired as a sergeant first class from the Army, I was the NCOIC of the emergency department at Walter Reed. And somebody said, well, what is that? And I said, I was the senior enlisted supervisor for a staff of over 150 people. That's huge when you talk to people versus trying to explain to somebody in a 2-page resume, I was the NCOIC for this and I was the NCOIC for that in the nursing industry. And I will tell you, even more important that is, I'm a nurse by trade, and I've been nursing full-time for about 30 years and then went to part-time because I'm not ready to give it up and give up my license. And I don't even do that for a living anymore. I do case management full-time now and support the programs that I work with, and then support the community here in Maryland with advocacy and other information that I work with to help facilitate legislation and policy for adults and children with disabilities. So you don't have to do what you did before to open new doors and find new directions. It's always out there for you.
Jonathan,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to touch base on point number 3, just because we have a comment, a really great comment in the chat, and it really is so important for caregivers to translate, their skills in caregiving to what would be, marketable, right, for careers. And one person, I thought this was very innovative and creative, was that they called their title as a caregiver, their role they called themselves a domestic engineer.
Absolutely.
That's very innovative and creative, and that's
You
something
know,
that caregivers are. We're just creative and flexible, and we're so powerful in that sense.
and that's the key, is looking at what you do for a living as a caregiver. It's okay to tell people you're a caregiver, but there's synonyms and all kinds of things out there that you can change the language, but still get your point across to people that what you do for a living is a job. I'm going to tell you, I know it for a fact with my wife and I always go back to this when I've worked with Marianne and all the other people that I've worked with to let them know I have a full-time job. My wife has a full-time job, and we had 2 foster children in this house 24/7, 365. And we were caregivers at the same time. And my wife includes that information on her resume because she was juggling schedules to work with specialists. She was going to appointments. She was managing the funds for these children because they are our foster children and not our own children. So there's a whole different finance piece to how she worked with them, how she got paid, working with 1099s, working with nursing services. And all of that is information that helps you grow your resume. And then what my wife did beyond that is she took all that information, and the program that we work with here in Maryland called Kennedy Krieger Institute, where we do foster care, we then translated that into curriculum to help educate and train future caregivers / foster parents. So then she can then go and say, she's not just a foster parent, but she does training for this organization and for the community that she can put in her resume when she goes out into the community to look for different occupations and work and skills and abilities. And that's part of where she got involved with supporting the VA and helping people understand from the civilian side, because I use her as an example all the time, and all the challenges she went through when she was a caregiver with the VA system, because her job is independent from me. So that kind of gives you a well-rounded look at all of the things that are out there. And I always use our house as a kind of an example, because we're juggling 15 balls in this house to do what we do. And then people are like, well, when do you take a vacation and when do you sleep? And believe me, we get it done. Okay. Next slide, please.
That's amazing.
Next slide. So we talked about the resume build, and I'm sure there's 100,000 questions out there. And I'm going to tell you, we could go on for days and days about resumes and information and all of the things that you can do. And what I'm going to tell you with the resume piece is get together with people, go to webinars and learn about these things. LinkedIn, PVA, Dole Foundation, American Red Cross. There's hundreds of organizations out there that have webinars on jobs and interview processing and resume building and all of those other capabilities. And what I tell people is, because I do it, and people are like, well, why do you go to all these webinars? Don't you have a job? And I said, I do. I have a full-time job, very comfortable job. But at the same time, I go to these to do two things. One is to educate myself what's going on in the industry, both public and private sector. And at the same time, I then give this information out to people because knowledge is power. And that's where we help people get ahead of the game, because everybody's got their little spin on how to do resumes. Everybody's got their little spin about how to do interviews. Everybody's got their spin about how to submit your resumes or do the things or look at organizations. And I always tell people my big takeaway that I don't hear a lot of time when I do the webinars with people and listen to them is, when you want to look for a job, look at the companies out there that you think you're interested in. Go out and Google what tech jobs are out there, what other industries are out there where you think you might have a heart to work, and learn about those companies and look at their websites, look at their mission, look at what they do for a living. Do they support the community? Do they know the military? Whether they really know the military or not, what do they do for a living, and how does it help you grow? Because that's one of those keys. There was a question or a comment? Nope. Networking. Like I said, if you're not networking, you're living in a hole. When you work on networking, it is clear that you guys have. So for those people that are part of this caregiver community, here's a network, but you can't focus on just this network. You got to grow yourself. I will tell you, the National Resource Directory, which is the application we run within our office, is on LinkedIn. And since 2018, I've connected with over 20,000 connections on that LinkedIn site. And that's how I actually ran into Precious and connected with her and got started. People are like, well, do you actually talk to all those 20,000 people? And I will tell you, yes, on a regular basis. But I also have my own personal LinkedIn account, and I have a Facebook account. And my Facebook account is family, but at the same time, it's all about sharing information within the community. And so I tell people, look to those places, connect with people, create teams, work with classmates. My master's program had 3 organizations that I got connected to, where it wasn't going to really help me a lot because I'm older on the age group. But at the same time, I've taken a lot of the information that I've grown and learned over the years and shared it with the students that I took classes with and that I've connected to on all of those platforms. And I've done it through all my education platforms. And as I work with the peer support coordinators in the field, that's another group that I connect with so that they can connect out. And we do these things like this webinar with them, and then we share that with their community. And so you're building that network so people know who you are and your engagement in the field, because you're not just living in a small box. And I know it's hard as a caregiver to find time for you to be able to fit all this stuff in. And I will tell you, I've had days where I've multitasked 2 or 3 events at the same time and just kind of listen to things and take notes. And I will tell you, if you don't learn anything else from the takeaway of today with the chat with me and what's going on, is learning how to journal and take notes on things so that you can go back and review them. And if they have links, or with some of the organizations where they tape things, and then if you're on their mailing list, they'll mail it to you the next day. Then you can go back and review it, and you can keep a file on, these are the webinars I did on jobs, or these are the webinars I did on education, or this is the webinar I did with FedEx or Amazon or Bank of America or Leidos or some other organization that's looking to hire people. And oh, by the way, on the end of that presentation is their connection and how to get in touch with them. And so it's all about helping build your tomorrow to help you get where you want to be. Because as a caregiver, I know you want to take care of your family just like I do, but at the same time, you got to be resilient and you got to take care of you. Because if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of anybody else, because the stress grows, and you got to make sure you do that. Personal resilience is everything in this game. When you're working with people, as it says here, don't ask for a job. You know, give them your information, let them know in the industry you're interested in work. And if you're not a good fit, you know what? Thank you for the opportunity to submit my resume. If there's other opportunities that come up in the future, or other things that you could let me know in the future, or webinars or education tools that you could provide, that you provide to the community, I would love to get that information or be on your mailing list for future information. Those are keys. Make it about them, not about you. All right, next slide. Personal branding. I love this slide. And the reason I love this slide is because this is a conversation I have with my colleagues on a regular basis. If you have an email that you use for your resumes and information and things like that, make it professional, because it's a tell on you for your future when you send your resume and your title for your email is somebody sent me a resume for review one day, and their return email was sexy size 6. And I was at AOL or Google or whatever it was. And I was like, really? The first thing I'm going to tell you is you got to professionalize your email. Use your name or something that's not, you name it, they're out there. And I'm going to tell you, that's probably one of the biggest turnoffs I get from people, because if you want to be professional and you're looking to get into the industry or get a job or something, you got to show that you're a professional person, and it's part of your marketing. If you're one of those people, and I encourage people to get on platforms like LinkedIn, especially if you're a caregiver or a wounded warrior, because you have a year's access to be able to get in for free and have premium. Make sure your email address is a solid professional email address, and put your picture up there. People want to know who you are. I mean, it's part of the platform, and it helps you grow. And you got to be confident about yourself. That's part of the importance of getting employed and getting hired. It's all about improving your chances. I will tell you, if you have Facebook accounts or Twitter or Instagram, it is very important that you be careful about what you put out there. And I say that because many, many employers these days are looking at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of the other social media for what people are posting out there and where their views are. And we all know that it's become a real issue across the United States with those platforms to look at it. You want to have a personal branding, and you want to show that you're a professional so that you can be part of the industry, and that you show people, I want to be part of your organization and help you grow and help you become a bigger organization. Even small organizations with mom and pop organizations are looking at those things so that they can see that this is somebody who's fun and has a work-life balance, but at the same time, they're also professional with their life. Next slide. Like I said, employers check Facebook accounts. Make sure your photos show you looking at a spreadsheet. You can if you want, whatever. But the point behind this is you want to make sure that they don't see craziness on Facebook. It's okay to do things, but remember, young people have one look, and then the older we get, we got to grow up and act the part to go with it. But family events, things like that are fine. It's just think twice before you post your pictures out there. Is this something that the future will mean to me if an employer sees it? Do I look inappropriate? Am I out slamming down 30 beers at a bar on a Friday night, versus I'm having a good time and being, a little bit more adult about things. And I know a lot of people say, well, does it really matter? And I will tell you, in this day and age with social media and everything, it does matter what's out there. It really does, because people will take time to look as part of their background investigating if it's a big industry or things like that. And they have the HR staff to look at those things as part of a pre-interview process. Next slide. Cover letters. Cover letters are always good. There are plenty of examples on the web. I pulled one off the web, and I would tell you it's important to let people know in the cover letter, it doesn't have to be a big, long dissertation, but let them know, hey, I checked out your organization. I saw this position. I'm interested. Here's a little bit about how I think that I can help you grow and enhance your organization. It's kind of a feeler for letting them know that you're out there, and then letting them know, hey, I'm available if you want to reach out. It doesn't have to be a big, long dissertation, but it should be a professional letter. And it doesn't take hard to do it. And there's plenty of templates on the web that you can pull down. This is just one of hundreds I looked at that I pulled down for people if they're interested. On the back end of it, if you do all this and you get to the interview process, but you weren't picked, don't just get cold shoulder with people and walk away. Let them know, thank you for the opportunity to interview. And if there's recommendations you could make in the future, please let me know. Or if there's other openings that become available, please let me know. But thank you for the opportunity to potentially be a part of your organization. Next slide. Tips. We've talked a little bit about this before, and I'm going to talk about it some more because it's important that you get there. Make sure that your resume is measurable when you write your resume. Take out the military jargon. Have a translation of your military jobs. The guy who's a pilot who worked and flew several hundred hours, if he's not going into the airline or some industry similar and he's changing the way he works, go there and learn about those things. I will tell you, as the second bullet says here, if you're looking for help at that, look at ONET online, because Department of Labor put that out, and it's a translator for military occupational skills to help put them in words. Military.com is a free site that does it. Even the PAVE toolkit that they have with the system is part of what they do. PVA has people that'll out there that'll help you do it. The transition patient advocates, if you're connected to the VA, can help you do these things. There's a whole list of people out there, or just help with your friends talking to you who have jobs or who've done this stuff in the past and have looked at their resumes and look at how they introduce themselves as far as their past occupations. Look at what they did that was important to connect them, and how they looked at their brands, and how they looked at performance metrics. And people are like, what? If you had a job in the past, and as part of that job, you were part of a budget that was even $50,000 or $100,000, it's important to know that you worked with that occupational skill set. You worked with that small company. They had $100,000 a year budget. You were part of that, and you helped them grow by 20% over the year. Whatever it is, it can be really simple for those people who've had prior experience. For those who have not, making sure to let people know, if you're a home person who has been managing a family, and you know that that family runs on a budget of $130,000 a year, and you've maintained that budget, and you've been able to do things with that budget to stay sustainable versus being behind the power curve and being in debt and things like that. Let people know you run a household of 6 people, your husband, spouse, partner, whatever, and 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and you've managed a budget of $130,000, including housing and everything else, and been able to juggle that while at the same time working with school, with the parent groups or community groups or whatever you've done out there. It's amazing what people don't think about when they don't take off the blinders and really think about what you do for a living every day. I will tell you probably the biggest takeaway I work with people when I help them with their resumes is I say, do me a favor. This resume is nice. It's got information on it, but you're not telling me anything. It's a 3-page resume and I don't know who you are and what you've done. I tell them what I want you to do is sit down and write down what you've done for a living. And I mean, really what you've done. And it could take you 5 or 6 pieces of paper. Once you've got that, then we can build a resume, because until you get it all out on paper, it's not going to help you. I had the challenge of working with a command sergeant major with 29 years in the military. And he called me and said, hey, can you look at my resume? Absolutely, Sergeant Major, be happy to. He sent me his 1.5-page resume. And I told him, Sergeant Major, we got a problem here. And he said, what do you mean we got a problem? I said, you're a division command sergeant major and you have a 1.5-page resume that doesn't tell me anything about what you did for 26 years. And he goes, well, I'm a sergeant major. I just manage people who manage stuff. And I said, yeah, but the buck stops at you. So the fact that your division managed a multi-million-dollar budget for medical or for artillery or whatever, technically you own it. The checkbook is yours. You're the one who helps build those finances and put that information out there. And he's like, never thought about it like that. I said, how many people were in your division? So technically, even though you supervised 20 or 30 people who supervised 200 people or 1,000 people, depending on your sections in the division, you oversaw 5,000 or 6,000 people as the command sergeant major or the senior supervisor or program director for this organization. It's how you put it into language that makes sense, you know? And so when you look at those things, it's important that you include them in your effort about doing this. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's a couple of examples of how to look at things when you're looking at how you want to write things, how you work with when you're going to do the interview processes. I would tell you there's a lot of organizations out there that help families and caregivers and do practice interview webinars and things like that, or work with friends. Do it. Practice it 50 times, because when you go in, you want to make sure that your hands are not floating all over the place, that you stand up well, and that you show people, I'm confident about who I am and I'm not nervous. I'm looking for a job. I'm looking to work for your organization, and own it. And then make sure that when you're responding to their questions, bottom line up front, get to the point and answer the question. Don't tell a thesis paper. Many interviews only get 15, 20, 30 minutes max, because they got other people coming through and they need to know that you're out there and that you're ready to go. So have your answers in your head. And sometimes I tell people, even take some 3x5 cards to make sure you hit targets on important topics that you want to make sure that you articulate to them, to make sure that they know who you are and how you do what you do. Strong headlines. Be aware of what you're doing when you're looking for your employment. Okay, next slide. Cover letters, we've talked about it. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this. I let people know, you know, it's a scan. It's a letter to let them know I'm interested in your organization. This is a quick overview of what I bring to the table. And in my resume, you'll be able to see much more detail about what I bring to the table to support your organization as part of an opportunity to work with you. And I look forward to hearing back from you. And so I know that this is recorded and all this is going to be available. So feel free to take this and look at it and review it and use it as you see fit. The biggest thing I want to talk about, and I'm almost done for those people who think I can talk all day, it's true, but I want to have people have an opportunity to ask some questions, is it's about resources. If people are on the left side of the DD-214 or still in the active side of Department of Defense and working as caregivers or whatever, I tell you, look at these websites. Our office has the Warrior Care homepage. It's called Warrior Care DoD Live, and it has a fact sheet on all of our portfolio within our organization. And I've talked about many of them: the peer support program, the E2I, which is the education employment, things that apply to what we're talking about today, the internship program. The National Resource Directory is 18,000 plus resources that are vetted resources, and it's a joint endeavor between DoD, VA, and Department of Labor. It's been around since 2009, and because I emphasize that the resources on there are vetted, that means if you go there, you are going to get something that's safe when you look for resources. And there's a mailbox on the website on the top right-hand toolbar that says info.nrd.osd@mail.mil. And any question you want to send us, we take. We never tell people you can't ask us. And the only question that's dumb is the one you guys don't reach out and ask. And there's topics for caregivers in there that help people. It's important to know that. American Red Cross Military Veteran Caregiver Network. I don't even have to go there. Y'all know it's out there and it's available, and they got tons of support out there. The Paralyzed Veterans of America. I've told you with that one, you don't have to be paralyzed to be part of it. You can learn about their employment webpage and where they do webinars 3-4 times a month on all kinds of topics. And they have organizations that come through, and they're actually almost hiring while they're doing the webinars. Department of Labor Vets, huge organization to work with the service members and families in their transition process with employment opportunities. And they're out there. I talked about Department of Agriculture. Check it out. Go to their website. See what their careers are all about. It's not just about farming. So let them know that you guys are interested, and they do webinars and information and all kinds of stuff throughout the year. And I will tell you, another one that I didn't put on here is U.S. Veterans Chamber of Commerce, that the team might want to put up in the chat so that you guys have it. U.S. Veterans Chamber of Commerce is an organization that's nationwide that works with the Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and there's 48 states that are connected, and they do quarterly job fairs and education fairs. And those job and education fairs are open to families, service members, veterans, caregivers, the whole population. And I will tell you, they are huge. The last one we just did last week had 38 federal, nonprofit, private sector, and public organizations that were hiring, taking resumes right off the web where you could interview and or share your resume with them. They're connecting and looking at people. And we had about 1,000 participants on it. It was a 2-day event from, I think it was 9 to 4 on Wednesday and noon to 5 on Thursday. I think those are the times. Don't quote me on it, but you can go to their website. They just did one in September, which means they're probably going to do one November, December timeframe like they did last year. And I would encourage you to do that. There's a lot of job and education fairs. Go to our LinkedIn site on the National Resource Directory, and you can see when those job fairs get posted, because we launch them out as well. And we work with health.mil, which is the part of the Defense Health Agency, to put it up on their web pages as well. Next slide. Questions.
This was great. Such great advice. Thank you so much for that insightful and resourceful presentation, Jonathan. It was great. You know, something you touched base on. You were telling a story about, having to translate a lot of that military experience into civilian work experience. And you were telling the story, and folks, and I say this as a caregiver myself, we don't really recognize that we do so much. And we really do need to, take a moment, step back, and write down all that we do, because it is so transferable to the job market. It's so marketable as to what we do. And, we are very competitive candidates. So
I work with thousands of caregivers who don't actually sit down and articulate what they do for a living.
Mhm.
The caregivers juggle balls all day, every day, 24/365. And you really need to take a moment and sit down, think about what you do for a living, and write it down. You run budgets, you run a unit of people, between school and sports and work and appointments and everything else that you do. And those are keys to look at when you're looking at an occupation. What can I do? You don't take enough credit for yourselves. You really don't, as far as the future and what you are capable of sharing with the community.
Yes. So let's move on to Q&A. I know
Yes, ma'am.
we might be running a little bit over time, but I have two important questions that must be asked. So one of our viewers asked, what suggestions can you give for someone who has no real valuable work experience or has been a caregiver for most of their adult life? I know we touched base on it, but if you just want to synthesize and
Uh,
summarize the main points, that would be great.
the main points is, first, sit down and write down what you've done. Take credit for what you've done. You've run a budget, you've run a family. All of those things are important. And then when you look at jobs, look at what labor jobs are out there that you could get into a labor position and become a supervisor because of the fact that you have sat down and managed all of these things and been successful at it, and take that and articulate it on the paper. Anymore, there's a lot of organizations that don't even do resumes. They do online applications where they want you to be able to answer some questions versus doing a resume, because many people just never quite get the hang of how to build a resume. So there's opportunities out there for you. Hope that answered that question for them.
No, that's great. Thank you. And then our last question for today, this was actually asked before the episode aired. So one of our HHCC members asked, some of our audience watching are full-time caregivers who have had to take a leave of absence in their careers. As a result, they face a gap in their resumes. What advice would you give to address that gap within their resume and in employer interviews?
Be prepared for the interview piece of it, to let them know that because your family member, significant other has had these challenges, you had to take a break from the industry, but at the same time, you've continued to do online education with the webinars, courses out there that people can do for free through LinkedIn or through any kind of organization out there are huge. And so I encourage them, get back online, or let them know that, hey, I was a caregiver, but at the same time, I went to school for something additional to do to keep my time up. And then, like I said, always be ready to talk through those other pieces of how you can be effective to the industry moving forward.
Oh, I think that's great. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. And as we close out our C3 episode, I want to announce our prize winners. So congratulations to our giveaway winners. Please email us directly at events@elizabethdolefoundation.org with a good mailing address, and we'll get these special prizes to you. So first off, we have April Mulvey, Aaron Amundsen, Katie Goodry. I hope I'm not butchering that name wrong. And then lastly, we have Carrie Fisher. Congratulations to our prize winners, and please email events@elizabethdolefoundation.org for your prizes. Jonathan, I want to touch base. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
Just let them know that at the end of my presentation was my LinkedIn account if they want to connect with us either through my LinkedIn account, or I encourage them to connect with us through the National Resource Directory LinkedIn account if they have questions in the future or not sure or whatever. And they can also reach out to me through the National Resource Directory mailbox, and we'll be happy to support or happy to help them get connected to other organizational information for benefits, resources, and services.
Yes, that's amazing. We have your information in the chat box.
Okay.
Now, thank you so much, Jonathan and Warrior.
Oh, no, thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share this information.
Of course, you have incredible resources for our hidden heroes, and we appreciate it so much. Now, for those who are watching, if you're not already registered with HHCC, we encourage you to join our Facebook group for updates. Our group is an inclusive community for military and veteran caregivers of all service eras. So if you care for a wounded, ill, or injured service member or veteran, we would love to welcome you into our community. Please visit hiddenheroes.org/register to get started. Also, be on the lookout for a follow-up email from us that will include the recording of today's meeting, with Jonathan's resources and organization info and the link to register with Hidden Heroes. And lastly, please, please, please don't forget to register for our next C3 Maintaining Balance online yoga for caregivers on October 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern. To register, please visit hiddenheroes.org/C3. Our next Employment C3 episode, Entrepreneurship 101, in collaboration with the Rosie Network, will also be on October 7th. So please register for that one. That one will be so exciting at bit.ly/C3 Rosie Network. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And a big thank you to our partners at Wounded Warrior Project and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs for supporting our C3 series. We hope you enjoyed today's C3 and please stay in touch and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.